Uh-oh. Okay, we'll start with this. Ennis has eyes on junior middleweight division. That weight is popping right now. IBF champion Ennis is next scheduled to defend his title against Karen Chukadzian on November 9th in a homecoming fight at the Wells Fargo Center in Philly. Should the heavy favorite Ennis successfully get past Chukadzian in the rematch, Boots will either be banging on the table calling for a welterweight title unification fight or moving to the junior middleweight division. The IBF backed Ennis into a corner and forced the Chukadzian rematch even after Ennis scored a shutout decision win against the Armenian from Ukraine last year. Vacating my belt wasn't a thought on my mind, Ennis told Boxing Scene. I was just staying in the gym, staying focused and doing what I needed to do to get better. I wasn't worried about what was going on the outside. I let my team handle all of that. I want to stay busy and collect the rest of these belts. If they are playing around, maybe we'll be at 154, maybe not, we'll see. I've been chasing everybody. I've been chasing Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, Keith Thurman. I've been chasing all these guys. Ask Crawford, ask them. Throwing around the name of Terrence Crawford has garnered Ennis some negative press, and rightfully so. He claims he's been chasing around Terrence Crawford, but all the eliminators he was fighting in at the time were for a belt that Terence wasn't holding. He was fighting in IBF eliminators at a time when all Terence had was the WBO title. So how could you claim that you're chasing him when you're fighting in eliminators for a belt that he didn't have? If you wanted him, you would have been fighting in WBO eliminators, not IBF eliminators. And things finally came to a head when Terence Crawford parted ways with Top Rank and crossed over to Black Prime. He had one fight there, the David Avanesian fight. And after he had that fight, the people at Black Prime, they reached out to Ennis. They reached out to him about doing a Crawford fight, in case you forgot.
And that they reached out. Were those talks ever really tangible?
I saw some stuff about people talking about, some discussions with BLK Prime.
You know what I mean? We was trying to set up a fight with him last month because BLK people called us.
I wouldn't characterize that as a discussion. There was a discussion.
I said, yeah, we'll take him in a heartbeat, just like that, right? And they said, all right, let's sit down and talk. I said, oh, you got to talk to my people first, though. Showtime.
Yes, but the reality is, they don't have a deal with Crawford.
I never signed nothing with Showtime.
If Crawford's under contract to BLK Prime, then maybe it goes through that. But the reality is,
with no signing, no contract.
They're trying to put together a fight just like we're trying to put together a fight. So the reality is it was a very short conversation. They didn't really bring much to the table in terms of helping make the deal. So there really was no point in following up on that yet.
See, I'm loyal to Showtime because I'm going to tell y'all.
If there's going to be a Boots and a fight between Boots and Crawford, there are easier ways to do it without going through them.
See, I'm loyal to Showtime because I'm going to tell y'all, I never signed nothing with Showtime. They fair with me, I'm fair with them. With no signing, no contract.
This is a part of why Ennis still gets negative press to this day. You're trying to convince people that you were chasing around Terence Crawford? No, you weren't. You were just saying his name in interviews the way you are now. And when he reached out to you, you guys were more focused on your relationship with Showtime than a fight with Terence Crawford, a relationship with Showtime that went nowhere since Showtime ended up leaving boxing. Left you high and dry. See, what it boils down to a lot of people, is that if Ennis had to go to Black Prime for that Crawford fight, than he should have, because he certainly wasn't the A-side, and the people at Showtime, it's not like they were putting up any money to do the Crawford fight.
They weren't.
So for as many times as you like to mention him in interviews, when the opportunity presented itself, you balked. You fell back. Your father said you didn't even have a contract with Showtime, so there was really nothing keeping you there aside from you wanting to be there, wanting to stay there. A lot of time has passed, and Terence is at junior middleweight now.
They asked Jaron Ennis about junior middleweight.
He said that weight is popping right now. Everybody's up there. Hopefully you might see me up there. You never know. They're all great fighters, but I really can't pick who's the best. Hopefully these guys will step up and sign the dotted line. These are the fights everybody wants to see. Outside of the top guys at 154, Ennis first wants to face the current 147-pound title holders Mario Barrios, Brian Norman, and Montes Stanionis, and accomplish the same undisputed goal that his predecessor, Terrence Crawford, did.
That's getting mixed reviews. Boots' continued desire to unify the welterweight division that really isn't what it used to be. He would be the favorite over Mario Barrios, over Montes Stanionis, over Brian Norman. He would be the favorite going in.
Some people don't think those guys present any challenge or any danger to Jaron Ennis, and thus, they want him to move up now. They want him to go to junior middleweight now. The Philadelphia-born and bred Ennis will take advantage of yet another homecoming fight while joining forces with super flyweight champion Jesse Rodriguez, his Boots Promotions fighters Ismail Muhammad and Dennis Thompson, as well as former champion Raymond Ford and surefire future title contender Ernesto Tito Mercado, as they throw their names into the hat to be considered the next faces of the sport. It's phenomenal and a blessing to be fighting at the Wells Fargo Center, said Ennis. The whole card is crazy from top to bottom, with one of the pound-for-pound greats in Bam Rodriguez. Contenders and prospects, it's going to be a great show and filled with fireworks. It's great for boxing when you have two of the top guys on the same card. Bam and I together will make it a powerful night. Bringing both of our fan bases together, we're going to have a good time.
So after this Chukadzian fight, should Boots move up?
Seem to be a lot of people that want him to. Jump into that meat grinder at 154 that, to a lot of people, is a more densely populated and talent-rich division than 147 is right now. The thing is that I don't know that moving up is any kind of a solution, that he won't face the same issues at 154 that he's already facing at 147.
What fights is he guaranteed at 154?
2 out of 4 major titles are on a PBC side of things with Sebastian Fundora. He's got the WBO and the WBC.
Question.
If he's been struggling to get PBC guys in the ring at 147, who's to say the exact same thing won't happen at 154? What about Terrence? Terrence Crawford. Terence is up there. He's got a belt.
The problem.
That ship has sailed. Terence is not interested in fighting the likes of Jaron Ennis anymore. He had his opportunity, he passed on it, and if you move up there looking for Terence now...
That ship has sailed.
What about Bakram Murtazaliev? Newly crowned Bakram Murtazaliev that just stopped Tim Kazoo. What about him? Makes for a great fight. I wouldn't mind it. Boots versus Murtazaliev. The thing is, you're going to leave 147, drop your IBF to go fight for somebody else's? That's not much of an upgrade.
Not really.
For those who are urging Jaron Ennis to leave 147 to go up to 154, I just don't know that it's going to be any better at 154 than it is now.
But that's a real solution?
People are shouting it from the rooftops like it is, but from where I'm sitting, it doesn't look like it. He could face the exact same issues at 154 that he's currently experiencing at 147, with the difference being at least at 147, he's got a title of his own.
Eventually, he's going to have to go up there.
Because he's a big welterweight, and he won't be able to make it comfortably. He won't be able to make it healthy forever. Though here and now, if we're looking at 154 as some kind of a remedy, some kind of a solution to what he's experiencing at 147, it really isn't. It doesn't look like it.
Maybe if the landscape changes a little bit after some time passes, but here and now, it really doesn't look like much of a solution.
So he should stay at welterweight.
Consider this.
Montes Stanionis is on the hook to satisfy a mandatory in Shakram Gayasov, who's connected to Matchroom. If Shakram Gayasov wins that fight,
Wins that belt.
Boots might have an easier time getting Shakram Gayasov to unify than Montes Stanionis was giving him. And what about Turkey? Turkey El Sheikh. He seems interested in using Boots for one of his Riyadh season shows. Maybe he could bankroll a unification match.
Maybe he should stay at 147 a while longer.
For talking about a guy who has yet to move up to junior middleweight, let's talk about a guy who's already there. Let's talk about Puerto Rico's own Xander Zayas. The WBO recently updated their rank standings across all weight classes, and they've installed Xander as the #1 contender via the WBO. The way it breaks down, Sebastian is the champion, Terence Crawford is the interim champion, and Xander is the #1 contender.
Longtime WBO president Paco Verasol recently stepped down after 28 years of service to the WBO, and Gustavo Olivieri was installed as the new president.
I feel like Terence had a good working relationship with Paco Verasol. I'm not sure if that now extends to Gustavo Olivieri, the new president.
I don't know.
There's so much that's murky about that situation, the Sebastian Fundora situation. He's got 2 alphabet titles with 2 separate mandatories in the queue for the both of them. Terrence Crawford by way of the WBO and Virgil Ortiz by way of the WBC. He is expected to be facing Errol Spence Jr. in his next fight.
When is that supposed to happen?
The PBC capped off this year doing just 5 shows. 5, and they're done.
Their 2024 is over.
Gives you the impression that they ain't got a lot of money. They don't have a lot to work with. And on that premise, when can we expect to see Fundora versus Spence if we see it at all? And if we don't see it, how long before the WBC puts pressure on Sebastian? The WBO puts pressure on Sebastian.
How long?
It all ties together when you think about it. He's the WBO champion, Terence is his mandatory, and Xander is the #1 contender. So, Sebastian Fundora petitioned for an exception to the mandatory to face a voluntary, and that exception was granted, but the WBO told him that he can't fight Errol because Errol's not ranked by the WBO. So that's a pickle.
That's a problem.
Meanwhile, after all these weeks following Terence Crawford's win over Israel Madrimov, we still don't know what he's going to do next, when he's going to fight, where is he going to go, what is he going to do.
We don't know.
But what we do know is that he's in possession of the full WBA title and he is WBO interim champion. He's the mandatory for the brown belt. Is he going to use that to get Sebastian in the ring, or is he focused on something else, someone else?
We don't know.
Xander Zayas of Puerto Rico has climbed to the #1 spot via the WBO's rankings, but he's not the mandatory. To achieve that status, he would have to get it from Terence. So are we looking at a potential order from the WBO for Terence Crawford to defend his interim title against Xander? I keep telling you, it all ties together, that if it's Xander's intention and his team's intention to at some point challenge for the WBO title, based on the lay of the land now, it looks like he'd have to go through Terence.
If that's what their intention is, and it must be, because these sanctioning fees, they don't pay themselves. If this guy's ranked at #1...
We've got to see. Xander Zayas. Those eggs still need more bacon. He's got great physical dimensions for a junior middleweight, big enough that he could one day move up to middleweight and perhaps cap off at super middleweight. He's very skillful, Xander Zayas. Good inside and outside the pocket, though he doesn't seem big on power. Doesn't seem that big a puncher, in spite of his size.
He's got speed, he's got skill, great combinations, balanced approach. He's got defense, he's got offense, but he doesn't seem to have much power.
He's already faced a former champion in Patrick Teixeira, so right about now is when things need to start getting serious.
Where the training wheels need to come off.
We are approaching that time, though with so much left of the imagination as it pertains to Sebastian Fundora, Terence Crawford, who knows how this cookie is going to crumble. All we know is that Xander's in position. He's in line.
What happens next? Your guess is as good as mine.
Now, in relation to the story that we just discussed, as 2 of the 4 major titles at junior middle are over there at the PBC that's in bed with Amazon.
An overview of their first year together and what we can expect in the coming year.
Veteran boxing scribe Abraham Gonzalez wrote, "Fans need to temper their expectations regarding the PBC schedule in 2025. From an outside perspective, it appears that Prime Video serves as little more than a distributor, without paying a licensing fee like Showtime, NBC,
or Fox used to. As a result, PBC is likely operating on its own budget, which explains why the number of events hasn't matched what was initially reported by ESPN. 12 to 14 shows. The current landscape explains why more mid-level fighters and below, who would typically be featured under the PBC banner, are now appearing on cards for Pro Box, Riyadh Season, and other shows. Since fans are eager for more content, PBC might consider organizing smaller-scale shows more regularly to satisfy demand without straining their budget. One thing PBC might also want to consider is a semi-annual update on what fans can expect regarding boxing events. Pay-per-views are declining, forcing guys like Turkey LL Sheik to reduce prices to $19.99. PBC may also need to consider the cost of their pay-per-views, as it will be increasingly difficult to ask fans to pay $69.99 and higher when you can get a premium pay-per-view for just $19.99. On the Prime Video side, PBC events lack proper build-up before Fight Week. There are no press releases on Amazon's media channels, nor do upcoming fights appear on the sports schedule as events to anticipate, a feature allowing fans to save to my list as soon as a fight is announced, like how Netflix immediately added Paul vs. Tyson to their queue, would also be a significant improvement. Effective marketing requires collaboration, and Amazon needs to step up its promotional efforts for PBC. If the partnership is indeed strong, Prime Video should increase its involvement in promoting these events next year. While fans often align themselves with specific promoters, hoping for the downfall of one over another is just silly. I feel attacked. Behind these promotional banners are fighters who depend on regular fights to feed their families. Then leave the PBC. What are you waiting for? The hope is that the PBC and Prime Video can ramp up their efforts to deliver consistent content each month. If that doesn't happen, however, PBC may be forced to scale down their hosting to smaller boutique-style events, as 2024 hasn't delivered a standout year of fights. 2025 will be a pivotal year to show what the PBC Prime Video partnership is capable of, and here I thought that that's what this year was supposed to be.
Scratch that. That's what they said. That's what they told me. But I knew better. What Abraham Gonzalez is writing about at the end of this year is what I told you at the end of the last one. Don't think this Amazon deal is going to be the same as the others, because it's not. More specific to the conversation we're having, with all these budget constraints and a limited amount of resources, a lack of commitment from Amazon to push and promote PBC shows, how are you supposed to do Spence versus Fundora? When are you supposed to do Spence versus Fundora? And at what price point to the consumer? Because Abraham is proposing they scale down the price, but they're operating out of necessity. What they're doing out of a need at this point. Yeah, sure, we can talk about how they painted themselves into a corner, but we've already done that. When you have both David Benavidez and Gervonta Davis boxing on the same show in the co-main and the main, can you really afford to scale down the price point? I don't think so.
So you're saying they shouldn't?
No, I'm saying they can't. It's the only way to get their fighters the money, the kind of money that they're looking for. It's what I told you. Crowd-funded boxing, because they don't have anybody giving them a budget anymore.
Abraham said that the fans need to temper their expectations. That's just a nice way of saying they need to lower them.
Mines were pretty low already.